Hi, everyone. I'm Jen, and it's Tuesday, the day of the week I've chosen to talk about many things like running a small business, pop culture, myself, and most importantly, I want to talk about it with my awesome yoga community here at the Bikram Yoga Alliance in Northern Virginia. Before we play the new opening for my show, I have a question for all of you. What do Bikram yoga and politics have in common? They're both not going anywhere. Coming up, I've got something really special to share with all of you in observance of Black History Month. But before I do that, I want to share some studio updates with our current, past, and potential yoga students. This weekend at the Bikram Yoga Alliance, we had Margie Toff, a longtime Bikram teacher, visit us virtually. Margie has been practicing for, 10, 15, 20 years, and she's been teaching since 2004. She was super complimentary of our students. She was full of love, and she gave a rocking class. For all of you who missed it, not to worry. You can access it through our on-demand service. Check out the description above or below and take her class at your convenience. Wake up, DC. You asked and we heard you. We now offer 6 a.m. classes in Falls Church, Monday through Thursday. That's right. If you're an early riser, don't miss the chance to practice in studio with a live teacher up to 4 times a week. And if you're not an early riser, let me try to change your mind. Here are 3 benefits to practicing yoga first thing in the morning. 1, beat the rush hour traffic. Also, 6 a.m. classes tend to be easier to book in advance. 2, your body changes more rapidly with a routine morning workout. 3, class is done. Check it off the list. You have the rest of the day to enjoy. We'll see you bright and early. This past weekend, Michael, Hannah, and myself had so much fun with the students who attended our virtual posture clinic. We loved your questions and your enthusiasm and your commitment to the practice. Did you miss it? We've got some options for you. You can catch up with Michael and me by booking some private time with us and get the attention you need to take your practice to the next level. You can also watch the entire clinic on our on-demand service. Again, the link is in the description. We're here with Sanyika. She is a Karma Yogi with us at the Bikram Yoga Alliance. Hi, Sanyika.
Hi there, Jen.
Oh my gosh, you look so pretty.
Thank you.
It's your smile. I look straight at your smile. So beautiful.
I received that.
Thank you so much for being here today.
You are welcome. It's so fun. It's my joy to be at this studio.
Oh, thank you. What a nice thing to say. So being a Karma Yogi means that she trades her service for yoga. So she comes in and before class and helps the teacher with our COVID-19 protocols, and then stays after class to help clean up after the students so that we're spick and span and safe. Yeah. So thank you so much for that you do that for the studio, Sanyika. It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So Sanyika, how did you find yoga?
Well, the student is ready, the teacher appears, the yoga appears, right? So
That's
I
right.
actually do not enjoy going to the gym, although I'm pretty competitive. And so I found yoga, I found particularly Bikram yoga in a small studio in South Plainfield, New Jersey. Well, actually it's Scotch Plains, New Jersey. So shout out to Wendy Gross Pinto for that. She was just amazing little powerhouse yogi that really helped me to not only hone my practice, but fall in love with the 26 postures and the crazy dialogue that is Bikram authentic yoga. And I've been practicing ever since for the last 20 years.
Wow. So you've been, we were talking earlier, it sounded like you've been all over the world, but most recently you were in California. In Southern California,
most recently,
right?
I was in California. Yeah. And so, but I practiced and traveled all over the world. And what I love about the consistency of Bikram is from Brooklyn to Belgium, it's the same thing. You're going to get the same thing, whether you understand the language of the native speaker or not. You know the 26 postures, you know what the hot room is supposed to feel like, you know, when you're going to switch and change and move and sweat and have your party time. So that's really great. But most recently, California, was where I called home and got a chance to practice lots of Bikram yoga there, and different forms of yoga as well. But it's the one thing I keep coming back to, this practice. I teach yoga as well. And
Wow.
I love the practice, but I also have a very full and busy life regularly. So I like the consistency and the quiet as much as I love a really great playlist and a really funky flow. I also like the quiet room with the same 26 postures and a dialogue that is pretty consistent. It just quiets my mind and it keeps me centered and focused on the practice, on my breath, on my body. And that's the thing that keeps drawing me back to this particular practice of yoga.
Oh, that's amazing. You said that at the end of quarantine, you had to find your community. You had to find something, and your community was yoga.
Was yoga. Yeah. I mean, I was very afraid that like the isolation was going to be the thing that was going to take me out, not COVID. I understand it's real and I don't want to downplay or negate the reality of it. But I do believe that the isolation was really causing more problems than the actual idea of having yoga, of having COVID. And so I knew that I needed community. And while I love the fact that we, even at this studio, allow streaming and people can do it from home, the space heater in the bathroom, wasn't working for me. That wasn't my thing. I couldn't quite make that transition. I needed the space. I needed the people. I needed the heat. I needed the community. And so I was really grateful to have found that Bikram Yoga Alliance in Alexandria and in Falls Church were alive and well and open, even with social distancing and challenging to get into a class. Just put your name on the wait list and make it happen, or become a karma yogi. And then you can get a space on your shift. So that's awesome too. But yeah, that was really important for me to find the physical community and to connect with the practice and the people, because it's not just one thing. It's a multi-layered thing, right? It's just like every practice, you're building it. You're not going from A to F. You're going from A to B to C to D to E, then F. It's the same thing with the breath. It's the same thing for me, the practice. It's not just about the practice. It's about the breath. It's about the people. It's about the heat in the room. It's about the teacher and how they inspire me. And so all of those were necessary elements for me to not only remain healthy, but to have my mental well-being taken care of during this interesting time.
How did you find the Alliance?
I found the Alliance.
The Alliance.
I have to tell you, so I have a girl crush on one of our teachers here, Felicia. Well, and then I have a guy.
Felicia.
Yeah, I know. She's
Felicia.
So awesome.
That's
so
so
I actually
great.
found a group onto another studio. And I practiced there, and she was one of the teachers there as well. And I said, is there anywhere else that I can find Bikram? Because I wasn't able to get to the class at that particular studio, except for a couple of times a week. And she's like, you have to come to the studio, the other studio that I teach at. Wow. And I looked you guys up, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're like 17 minutes away from me. And then I fell in love with Mikey. And then it was just like, well, his name is Michael, but I call him Mikey, but you can't call him Mikey because he only lets me call him Mikey. But anyway, there's that. So
that's only between you and him, that's a special thing between the two of you.
It's totally special. Yeah.
That's adorable.
Nobody else can call him that. So then, but just really just the community and the feel, and not only the authentic practice that Bikram really instills in the alliances around the US and the world, but also just the genuine community. It just felt like home. Everybody was just kind and nice. And even with masks on, you saw the smiles underneath them, and you just saw we want to do this thing called yoga. We want to do this thing called community because it matters and it's important now more so than ever. Right. And then you start to appreciate what you were missing. Like, you might not have appreciated as much. I didn't until you don't have it. And then it's like, I need it. I need the people. I need the heat. I need it all.
I remember meeting you and I didn't know how to say your name. And you were so sweet. You were so sweet. You took me through how to say your name, because I just looked at the name on the screen and I thought, I don't want to butcher that. So I'm going to ask you how to say your name. And you were so sweet to me. You didn't make me feel stupid. Thank you.
No.
That was so sweet.
Yeah, I think, you know what, and that's something that's really interesting. I think that we're finding ourselves in a time where, particularly in this country, we're having such a tender time, because there's so many layers as it relates to race and differences and people and everything like that. And what I know for sure is often you have to be someone's experience. The reality is we live in small groups. And so often, if you don't have the opportunity for someone to come into your group, people always ask me, like, how's your hair? They'll say, I love your dreadlocks. And I'm like, there's nothing dreadful about them. And they'll go, oh my God, I didn't know you had locks. And I'm like, it's okay because they're locks. But the reality is they were called dreadlocks for a reason, because when people of my race, of my culture, were brought to the United States and to European countries, their hair seemed dreadful to Europeans who had very straight hair. So it was like, oh, this dreadful hair. Yeah. So there is a reality that comes along with, we have to be kind through the questions, right? And we have to answer questions that perhaps we might be tired of and we want to roll our eyes at, but are really real. So if you don't know what my hair feels like and you want to touch it, okay, you can touch my hair. It feels like hair. It feels different than your hair, but it feels like hair, right? And so when things become normalized to us, it's easy for us to look at someone else and assume they should know. But Sanyika is a unique name in Swahili. It means the gatherer. So you would say Sanyika, come gather. But Sanyika, the spelling of it it doesn't match a European vernacular, so it's difficult to pronounce if you don't know. So yeah, it's Sanyika. Sonyeeka is how you phonetically spell it. But Sanyika is my name.
Oh, it's so pretty when you look at it, when you see it written the way you have it written, your name. But I remember looking at it thinking, I'm going to say that wrong. And the most beautiful sound in the world is our name.
Yes.
So you want to hear your name said the way it's supposed to be said. So yeah, that was really, it was a tender moment between us. And it's like my first memory of you being so sweet to me. So, but then you brought up Felicia. So I want to circle back to Felicia, because Felicia is one of the exciting reasons why we're here today, because a few weeks ago at the beginning of the month, she shared a social post on our teacher thread, on our private teacher thread. And the post had a picture of a lot of Black yogis and our teacher, Bikram. And we all were just asking her, where did you get this? We want to read the article. So I went to the author of the post, and it led me down this rabbit hole of finding an issue of Ebony Magazine from 1975. And
I was 3 years old at the time.
Yeah, wow. Now that's so cool. We're the same age. So there it is. There's the magazine. It was so much fun. I found it on eBay, a vintage copy of Ebony Magazine. And when it was sitting in my hand, about a week later, there it was sitting in my hand. And I was leaping through it thinking it was dated. I didn't want to be offensive with it, but then I realized, what is offensive? Offensive is not knowing, not understanding. So it took me down a rabbit hole of researching the people mentioned in the article and current day Ebony, which is online. And it made me feel like I was connected to my teacher again. But when you're reading the article, it talks about Black yogis being on the rise. And I wonder what happened, because now we're talking about diversity, definitely within the studio. But people say they act as though the diversity is current. So I wondered what you thought about that.
What I think about acting as if the diversity is current versus
not.
I think there's a lot of things going on. I think that, yoga and multiple practices of movement have always been part of the Black community. I think that particularly Bikram yoga is an interesting phenomenon and a bit of an anomaly in and of itself, because, when you follow the Bikram way of doing things, there is a particular authenticity that you agree to and the way that you choose to work. And not a lot of Blacks are Bikram certified and have Bikram yoga studios, and so that could be part of it. But I think that just within the overall community, the face of yoga in the Western world has looked blonde and blue and white. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you see. It's just not as prevalent or it doesn't seem as prevalent or popular. But it's there, and there's a huge representation of Black and brown in the yoga world, and I love that. And I mean, I find that the diversity does exist within the community. It just doesn't seem as obvious always as it does in other communities.
Yeah, inclusion. The first step of inclusion, of course, is feeling like you look like something.
Yes.
But then the next step is to make you feel as
like you belong. Yeah.
Like you belong. So, I mean, that's what I loved about the Bikram room. The first time I walked in 2008, I wasn't really looking for diversity. When I walked in, I was different than everybody, but I felt welcome.
Yeah.
I didn't feel, I felt like I was allowed to be myself. even though I
Right.
didn't look like everybody else in the room.
Right.
But that's specifically the Bikram. But you mentioned earlier the issue with hair and your look, right? You were
Hair is
talking
a
about
thing.
your hair,
Hair is
and
a thing, honey.
hair is a
Yes.
thing. So
Hair is a thing. I mean, particularly in the Black and brown communities, you know, my natural hair texture, most of our natural hair texture is a kinky, coily hair that resists water, that repels water, that water sits on top of, that causes it to be frizzy and unruly, and all of these perhaps terms that some people think. So if you don't have a natural hairstyle like myself, or if you don't wear braids like Felicia, it's difficult to maintain a practice in 105 degrees and with humidity on purpose, and still come out and be able to go to work and be able to live your normal life. And so that's a real thing. But I think that a lot of there have been so many people who are embracing different things. They'll wear a bandana, they'll pull their hair in a ponytail, they'll put it into a couple of braids until they're finished with class. So I've noticed a lot of women, particularly, have not continued to allow that to be a reason that they won't practice this form of yoga. But it's still limiting and restrictive because of the specifics of how we practice this yoga. It is in a purposely heated, humid room that's generally not friendly to frizzy hair.
I love that you brought my attention to that, like just something I hadn't even been thinking about. And it's important. So, you know, we all look at something that we love, and we try to be like, why doesn't everybody love it? Instead of saying, I wonder why.
I wonder why.
I wonder
that could be a challenge for some people.
I wonder why that could be a challenge for someone. So yeah, it's wonderful that you brought that back to my attention, and to anybody's attention who's curious. So that's amazing. So a little bit more about the article. I really enjoyed that. I read it as soon as I got it in my hands. I read it, but what I really enjoyed was being able to offer it to everybody to read. And then I realized, as each person read it, that they were reading it with different eyes, with a different perspective, and it's just been wonderful to be able to share that with you. So
I think that's the power of everything. We do come to things from a different lens. You know, I actually also am a psychology major. I'm getting my graduate degree my master's in psychology.
Wow.
And what I love is that there's something that we say in psychology, which is no one is ever born into the same family, which seems kind of odd because you're like, wait a minute, but I come from a very large family. And what I realize is every time a new child is born, the dynamic of the family changes because there was never you before. Right. And so the reality is, when we're reading this article, or when we're experiencing what someone's life experience is, we're never going to see it from the same perspective, because it's always just a different vantage point. And it doesn't mean it's right or it's wrong. It just means it's different. I happen to be a Black woman who is naturally thin. I don't have a challenge with weight. I tell my students all the time, I should not be your poster child. I will suck it down like a Hoover and finish it off with a Slurpee, and it won't affect my weight at all. But for some other people who weight might be a challenge for, they might have a different reality. And so there's the what we wear in Bikram, is also something that can be somewhat off-putting, because, we're looking at ourselves in the mirror. And if you have a body image challenge, if you're not quite comfortable in the skin you're in yet, it can be a challenge to look at yourself in the mirror and do a posture that's already difficult, and be critical of what's going on in your head because of what you perceive that you see on the outside, because maybe it doesn't match up with what you see on television or what you see as the norm for beauty. So there are a lot of reasons that Bikram can be challenging, but there are also so many reasons that it can be beautiful and worthy of embracing as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite expressions is, don't believe everything you think. So
yes,
when you're looking at something and you're thinking about it, maybe don't believe it. Be more curious about what.
Be curious about it.
Yeah, be curious
Curiosity
about
is a beautiful
what else
thing.
there could be. What do I think?
Yeah.
But what else could there be attached to it?
Yes. What could be happening here?
You've got some exciting stuff happening in the future, the very near future.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm happy to say that
Sunday.
Yeah. That's so great.
I found my person in a pandemic. So
that's amazing.
It's just, that's another fun story for another video. But seriously, one of the things I love about what I love about the reality of life is it's both messy and beautiful. It's both, blessings buried in the broken pieces, and it's the both and. And I think a lot of times, a lot of what we've felt in this pandemic is like the either or. Like, I can't wait till things go back to normal. And I'm like, what if normal never comes back? You still have to live. You still get to live, you know? So everyone has to come to an awareness of their own for what's going to feel safe and what's going to feel appropriate. But mostly it's just a matter of life is now, and it's blessy, and it's messy, and it's beautiful at the same time. And yes, you can find your person in a pandemic, or, you know, you can just sit back and go, I can't wait for normal to come back. Or you can just say, you know what, I'm going to go to yoga when there's only 10 people instead of when there's 100 people in the class. Yeah. You get to choose your choice and your response in this. And a lot of what you choose is going to change and shift how you feel about what we're currently experiencing.
Right. And it's normal to fall in love, and it's also rare.
Yeah.
So
it is.
It's normal, and it's beautifully rare.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited
indeed.
for you. Congratulations. I'm excited to be a part of that this weekend. Yes. So much fun. Thanks to, I mean, there's something great that came out of the pandemic. I get to come to your wedding virtually.
Oh, how fun is that?
I know. That's so great. I'm so excited about that. Oh, thank you, Sanyika. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me, being a part of my studio, keeping my eyes open to the variety of people that choose to walk through the front door, and how we're all really the same. We just love the yoga.
Really.
We're trying really hard to love each other. And
exactly.
It's amazing.
No, and I love it. I love it. I'm so grateful that, you know, I mean, it's huge. It's huge that you have chosen, and Michael as the studio manager, that you guys have just pushed and fought and chosen to stay open and stay safe and keep this going. It's not an easy feat. It's incredibly difficult during this time. And I know a lot of studios are suffering, and they're challenged. And so the fact that you guys warrior on in this way is noteworthy. And, you know, it's definitely something that I'm going to keep coming back as long as the doors are open. So keep fighting. It's almost over. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's almost over, and I can't wait for it to begin. Right?
Exactly. Every day.
Thank you so much for being a part of this business, about this yoga, and, you know, being in my heart. It's wonderful.